Welcome to another edition of Cyber Coast to Coast. This is Craig Schober coming at you from Long Beach, California on the West Coast. And I'm joined by my brother once again, Scott Schober. Hey, Scott, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going there, Craig? Hi, everybody.
It's good here. We're going to jump right into this week's episode. We got three good stories. But first, before we get into anything, I want to remind everyone listening that this episode is sponsored by Dark Kryptonite. Dark Kryptonite stops ransomware, malware, and phishing in their tracks, eliminating cybercrime, fraud, and information warfare using advanced blockchain algorithms and zero trust models. If you don't know what any of that stuff means, go to www.darkkryptonite.com and learn all about it. Kryptonite is a C, not the K, not the Superman K kryptonite. It's Dark Kryptonite with a C. So go to darkkryptonite.com and learn all about it. And we'll have some, hopefully have some more announcements about Dark Kryptonite, some exciting things coming. Can't talk about it now, but in future episodes, we're going to have more information. So stay tuned for all that stuff. Okay, on to the stories this week. We got three good ones. Well, I'll take them one by one. First we got the you've heard about some TikTok controversies lately involving user data. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to delve into the Google Play Store with some Android malware. 3 million downloads, not a good look. So we'll get you those details, and we're also going to look at more of a, I guess, kind of a local story involving a senior that was taken for a lot of money, Scott's gonna. I believe you have a lot more information to share on that one because you actually did an appearance with was it Ashley Banfield?
Yes, yeah, News Nation. Yeah,
News on News Nation.
I'll talk more about that at the end there.
Yeah, so we'll look forward to hearing all about that stuff, and of course, that's going to also tie in nicely to our cyber tip of the week, which is about keeping your private data secure and safe. So it all, it all ties in. There's a lot of overlap here. It's all about keeping your data safe. So let's get right into the first story. This one, this story's a little older. It's still very relevant. It's still in the news. But we missed the past. I don't know if we missed the past 2 weeks of this show. We have a lot of stuff going on at Berkeley, a lot of stuff going on in our personal lives. And so apologies to the listeners who count on this kind of news rundown weekly. We missed them. So we were going to do this story last episode and we missed last episode. So let's take up with it right now. It comes, I found this on BuzzFeed News, which I think kind of kicked off the controversy because this story kind of had a domino effect. But anyway, we'll get into that. The headline reads, leaked audio from 80 internal TikTok meetings show that US user data has been repeatedly accessed from China. So you might recall going way back to the Trump administration when TikTok first got on the radar of government. It was even before that, people were saying, hey, this is a Chinese company. I don't trust China, all the usual. But no one was doing anything about it. Finally, there was a Trump rally that, was kind of embarrassed or took some heat for not filling up the area, not filling up the arena. And of course, TikTok activists took credit for that, which kind of embarrassed Trump, I guess. So then next thing we know, he's targeting TikTok, saying it's a danger, it's a Chinese run company. They have all our user data. And there's some merit to that argument, although the reasons for it are a little bit suspicious. But that was going on that was almost 2 years ago. I feel like that story went down, and now we're seeing kind of a new skin, a new layer of that onion unpeeling slowly.
Hmm.
When we found it was recently discovered that China was in fact accessing, even though the data has resided on U.S. servers. I think is it Oracle? I think they're on Oracle servers. I believe that was the deal they struck. I mean, there was
Yes.
talk about Microsoft buying TikTok,
It
Oracle buying TikTok. All these back and forth things went on
was
forever.
all,
Yeah.
yeah.
And by the way, you can get more of this backstory. We wrote a blog we posted it on bvsystems.com and scottshober.com.
Yes.
It's all about TikTok, and this kind of backstory, which leads us up to this current story. Let me see. Did I pull up that? No, I did not. Oh, yeah, here we go. What's it called? Just to give people something to look for. Is TikTok the devil you know, or worse? So that it kind of takes a different take on the whole TikTok thing, and you'll figure that out when we get to it, and I'll probably pepper the story with some of those ideas. But anyway,
Yeah.
back to the story. Um, uh, Chinese TikTok employees apparently were accessing TikTok data. U.S. was not happy about that, so we had an FCC commissioner, Brendan Carr. He called out TikTok on Twitter for these kind of the collection of keystroke patterns, biometric facial data, voice print data, location data, browser history. Some of this stuff is standard social media collection, data harvesting
Hmm.
that everyone does. Some of it seems to go a little too far and unnecessary. But I guess in the end, you have people are worried that there's just too much personal data, too much private data, too many things are being exposed on on a massive social network, which has become, it's kind of graduated into more than just kids lip syncing and dancing.
Yes, that's true.
There's a lot of political discussion on TikTok now. There's a lot of social discussion, economic discussion.
Hmm.
It's not just, and there's also how-to videos and a lot of
Hmm.
other entertaining and fun things, that YouTube
Yeah, I think
kind of.
also chatting. There's a lot of chatting between people on the platform, which opens the door up for when now you're comparing it to maybe what Instagram or WhatsApp or things of that sort that also have some insecurities. But I guess some of the stuff, the research and things I've talked about with people is that from a chatting app perspective and some of the other things that TikTok has, it's actually collecting more data than any other social media platform currently. So that's really concerning. And it does not have end-to-end encryption for the messaging part, whereas
Mhm.
WhatsApp does and a few of these others. So it's kind of at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to, is it secure and is it safe? And then I think the kind of the thing on top of it, and you kind of alluded to it from the title of the article, is it's owned by a Chinese company. So basically, China and the government is monitoring and pulling and collecting all of this uh, data off. And I think that the means they do it, and I think the article touched on it. We talked about it the other day because I did an interview actually on one of the TV channels, TV networks, when this story first broke a couple of weeks ago. And it was interesting. And I shared that the user data is being shared by third parties, and it's even after the user that signs up for TikTok opts out of the
Mhm.
data sharing. So they're basically going in there, setting their privacy settings so nobody shares any of your personal data that you set up your account with. You've opted out of that, and yet TikTok is ignoring that, and they're still sharing it. And those people are buying and selling the information, and China is using it, this data harvesting, for their own purposes. That's very concerning, and I think that should tell people you really have to realize what you put on TikTok is not secure, and it's out there for the masses to see.
Yeah, and and the to me that's the biggest no-no, the third party stuff, because we've
Yeah.
seen that play out before with Facebook, and it doesn't go well. It's a terrible look. No one it leads to lack of trust in your network, lack of trust in well, the third parties, you don't even know who they are, so you don't know who not to even trust on that end. But you do know that, this is the Chinese Communist Party essentially controls this company, and regardless where the data resides, doesn't mean anything, because you can read and manipulate and share data from anywhere in the
Hmm.
world, regardless of where that data is, if you control the data. And that's currently what's still happening. So I think we're going to see a lot more play out on that end. But I guess one of the things too that we were kind of alluding to with the blog and the title of that blog is that it's becoming more difficult to know who to trust. I mean, on the one hand, you have China, and they have a lot of reasons to steal data from the U.S., to spy on the U.S. and all those things. And likewise, the U.S. does the same thing. We know that U.S. is spying and doing the same thing. We just don't know the degree of it because we're citizens here in the U.S. And so we don't, they get their propaganda, we get our propaganda, as it were.
Hmm.
But it's becoming increasingly, difficult for U.S. citizens to even trust our own government. So
Yeah.
it's I think it might be at an all-time low as far as trust in the government, and this goes for both Democrats and Republicans, if you want to break it down by party lines. So
That's true. It's
it's
true.
just imagine a scenario where the U.S. strips control of TikTok somehow, whether they force a buyout or whatever. But somehow, imagine the U.S. is controlling that data and looking at that data. Do you really trust them more than China? After all, the U.S. is the only one that can make laws against its own citizens that restrict all types of things, privacy
Mhm.
violations. And China can't do that. China can just spy on us and use that data to kind of um, indirectly manipulate us, kind of like the way the Russians might have done on, with the Cambridge Analytica. They,
Mhm.
manipulate the elections, but that's an indirect process, and China can't directly manipulate things and pick a winner, as it were. But in the U.S., I think U.S. We have gerrymandering laws. We have these new kind of abortion rights things that people are being, it hasn't gone into. We haven't seen people get prosecuted yet for these things, but it's beginning to happen, and that you know data, a pool of data that big on TikTok, that's a treasure trove for prosecutors to go after people, and people that are affiliated with criminals, and all the metadata that comes with that. So I don't know. I don't trust the U.S. with personal data. I don't know. What do you think, Scott?
N- No, anymore. I don't trust anybody. I mean, even if you went back a few years to some degree, as you mentioned earlier, Facebook and other companies, you'd say would never sell data or never sell it to third parties. These APIs that would give us to it, and so on and so forth. Well, fast forward a couple of years later, and that's what all these companies do. And if anything, it's now you don't trust. At least I don't trust Facebook at all, or Instagram, or any of these other social media giants. Certainly not TikTok, because you know that they're actively selling it, and there is no privacy. And on top of that, I guess you get into another whole issue about censorship, and when do they step in, when do they pull videos or content. It's a very fuzzy, um, I guess, line that's been drawn in the sand between all these social media companies, when there's kind of overreach by a certain government or entities that say you can or can't do this, and then what they themselves do. So I've kind of, as a blanket statement, I don't trust any of them anymore, and I'm a lot more guarded than I used to be as far as making comments or likes or following certain individuals or posting certain content, because things are misconstrued and taken out of context, and it's not what you believe in the beginning, even as the result of what comes out. So I think this is just yet another story kind of reinforcing my abhorrence for the world of social media. Even though we're all in it, we have to be a lot more careful.
Yep. That's that's true, and we'll have more. I haven't heard of any kind of ramifications from this. It's been a little quiet as far as the FCC commissioner. I thought we'd see some more um, legislative action or talk of that at least, since he kind of called out TikTok, and there was a little back
Yeah.
and forth scuffle a few weeks ago when that originally came out. Haven't seen anything happen, but we'll keep looking at the story because it's definitely not over. TikTok is the biggest, the most downloaded, at least, social media network, and they were asked by, I don't know if it was this FCC commissioner specifically, but somebody up in the upper ranks of the government specifically called on Apple and Google to pull TikTok from the App Store, which is, that's a huge deal. That would kill TikTok, at least in the
Mm-hmm.
US overnight, if that ever happened. And it would hurt, Apple and Google too, for sure. So I don't think they would cave unless there was some kind of ultimatum from the government. But so
Yeah.
that's why we're going to keep looking at that one, and get back to you on that. Let's jump to the next story here. We've got a new Android malware. It's been downloaded over 3 million times. And I think a few of these were still found on the Google Play Store as of this story's appearance. I found it on bleepingcomputer.com.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, these were flaws that were in there for, I think, about 6 months. They were reported to Google. Google did nothing about them, and did nothing to patch them or secure them. Only recently they pulled off a few of these. A couple of them are still on there, but apparently this researcher, I don't see the name in the story, but researcher found these, and he chose to publish them after this kind of non-action. After Google didn't kind of acknowledge them. This is usually we hear about these bounty bugs and payouts for people finding things, and this sounds like a legitimate find. It sounds like one that affected a lot of people, but quiet from Google. So that's strange because they're pretty aggressive on this stuff. They have their work cut out for them. They've got
Yeah.
a lot of malware, a lot of bugs appearing on the Google Play Store on a regular basis. If anyone's going to be quiet about this stuff, usually you think Apple would be, because they're the guys who they play their cards a little closer to the vest. They don't. I think a lot of it's for the fear of publicizing the fact that they even have any malware. They don't want anyone to even
It's not talked about at all.
yeah, so as a result, a lot of times these researchers and hackers will come forward and say, "Hey, I talked to Apple about this a year ago. They did nothing. So now I'm going to publish all this, my findings and this data." And then usually the story goes away quickly because Apple gets in touch with them, probably pays them off a bounty of something, and the problem is fixed, or at least started to get fixed. But not so in this case. Um, let's see. I'm just reading through the bullet points here. Sorry, because I'm trying to catch up on the attack. Apparently, it's using a SMS reader permissions. I think
Just reading. Yeah.
yeah, it they how the standard thing when you download a new app, a lot of times they'll ask for your contacts, or they'll ask for your location, or they'll ask to get your turn to access your Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, or those kinds of thing. In this case, they ask for these apps, the malware. it's actually called, it actually has a name called Autolycos. It asks for permission for SMS text messages, which is strange because I don't even know what app would, I wouldn't try. I would never. What app would you trust that needs permission? Like, first of all, why would it need permission for your messages unless it's already a dedicated, kind of encrypted messaging app? But even in that case, I wouldn't trust it with access to all my SMS messages.
Yeah.
For
But I think
and
that's part of the problem, though. What you just touched on is most users, and I talk to a lot of people, just your everyday person, when they get these pop-ups that come up as they're downloading something for a store from a store on their phone, they just click okay, 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 accept. They're not reading anything.
Mhm.
So when there's things that, hey, do we have access to your, permission for SMS or this or that? Sure, I guess so. Okay, what is that? They don't know the acronyms. They don't care, and I think that's fundamentally part of the problem. I'm still amazed that this many 3 million times it was downloaded. I mean, that's kind of staggering. I guess the fact that it's in several popular apps, number one,
Mhm.
that's part of it. And then I started thinking about it. This is not isolated to the US. And then I started thinking about it after reading the article. And I think of the US kind of dominates with the iPhone. And when I looked up stats, it's actually true. Within the market share, if you compare Android operating systems, let's just generalize it to iOS, Apple operating system. In the global market, Android, I should say, has about 72% market share globally, and
Mhm.
iOS about 27%. When you look just in the US, though, it's just shy of about 60% iOS versus 40% for Android. I think that's interesting. It kind of flip flops. So, and I think it's strictly because of price. Buy a phone with an Android operating system for 30-40 bucks now on Amazon. It's cheap. Can you buy any version of any iPhone anywhere in the world that cheap? Not even close.
Mhm.
Even the low cost ones they sell in China, I think, are a few $100s, the low end ones. So I think that's a big part of it, just the sheer cost and stuff. But staggering 3 million people that have downloaded this. And now you start to see why there's so many problems in the world of smartphones and malware. And to some degree, I think, and I don't know what your thoughts are, I think it's going to get worse because more and more, and we've talked about this in the past, people are migrating away from a desktop computer. They're migrating away from a laptop and a tablet and trying to do everything on these smartphones.
Mhm.
So that just means it's a bigger surface area that you can now, in a sense, target and attack just based upon the sheer number of users. And that's interesting,
Yeah.
how the dynamics are slowly changing. I think this problem is only going to get worse. I think in the world of Google Android, they got to do a better job vetting this stuff on the store or stores like Apple is doing, because they are overly paranoid, and yet things still get through, but they got to do more.
Yeah, and it's like you were saying, a lot of it's convenience and kind of laziness, and you just say accept, and and you're accepting it,
Yeah.
and this is this we're gonna see, and also like you said, we're gonna see a lot more of this because I don't know if you've heard about the super app, the concept of the super app, where it's essentially combining a few different services into one app. So now you
One
have,
single.
for instance, it's a social media app that's also a payment app that's
Hmm.
also a shopping app, for instance, it's that kind of thing that exists because of people's need for convenience. They don't want to leave
Yeah.
the app. They want to stay in the app and they want a one-stop shopping. They want to do it all.
Hmm.
And that's the larger attack surface you're talking about.
Yes.
That's you have one malware slips into one of these apps within a super app. Now suddenly they're all sharing the malware, they're all sharing the same problem, and you've just increased the attack surface, thereby increasing the damage done to the users that have this. So it's going to be a bigger problem. I think everyone sees that coming. Let's hope they lock it down and figure out a way to create, I guess, silos that are
Hmm.
secure, but yet somehow manage to seamlessly communicate with each other. Um, For the just backing up for a second, any Android users out there, if you've seen, or if you have this on your phone, funny camera or Razer keyboard and theme, delete those immediately. Those are two of the currently still active apps that contain this malware. 8 other infected apps, they have been removed by Google. So let's hope Google removes these remaining two. And if you see these apps, or if you see them on someone else's phone, or someone talks about them, yeah, just send them a warning, delete them, don't look back, don't even reach out to these developers. Don't you don't need to. They're not gonna, if they're even legitimate, they're not gonna, who knows what their association is with this malware, if it got on there accidentally or they're part of these hackers. You don't need to know anymore other than the delete button. Yeah. So
you know what I'm always thinking, not to deviate, but it makes me kind of laugh a little bit. I always wonder, do competitive companies, in other words, does Android, do they have any coders that actually are creating malware targeting Apple iOS devices? And does Apple have any coders that are targeting Android OS devices? I hope the answer to both of those is no and no, but it always made me wonder about the same thing with companies that offer antivirus and malware. If they have a percentage of employees that are creating malware in the back of the building quietly and releasing it, and their detector happens to be the one that detects that 0-day vulnerability before anybody else on the market, and then suddenly their sales explode. Because if you look at the sheer numbers, and I did this once, how much money there is in antivirus and anti-malware software and anti-keystroke and this and that, there's billions upon billions of dollars in software, mostly reoccurring licensing fees, monthly fees or yearly fees that are being raked in by all of these companies collectively. It's a little bit concerning. I'm just curious if the world of smartphones, if there's any of that strange competition going on.
Yeah, well, I think you're I think I half agree with you. I think they definitely are creating these things because it's kind of a form of white hat, hacking in a way, and it's a way to exploit other devices. I think when you cross the line is when you distribute it, and that's crossing a technical line and a legal line. I think so long as you keep these, kind of like creating new strains of virus in a Wuhan lab in China, for instance, for COVID. I mean, those things are all done in order to create future vaccines that can benefit humankind. It's when they escape the lab is when the trouble starts. And whether you believe in something escaped by accident, or it just kind of occurred in nature, or it was planted on purpose in someone to spread it, whether we're talking about a biological virus or a computer virus, that goes down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole. But the second I think you step over that line, you cross that line and distribute this, that's when you're causing, that's when you've gone from white hat to black hat, definitely, and you're wreaking havoc. And, that would be a huge scandal for any one of these companies if it could ever be proven, because not only are you causing a nightmare for users, you're profiting off of that now. And the courts would only see billions upon billions of dollars in fines coming from that kind of behavior. So let's hope it's not, let's hope it's not happening at all, but I'm sure some of it's going on, just in terms of just for academic reasons, we'll say. Hopefully they're learning from their mistakes. All right, let's move on to our third story. But before we do, just want to remind our listeners that Dark Kryptonite is a sponsor of this episode. And if you've got ransomware, malware, phishing concerns, You want to look into Dark Kryptonite's offerings. This is a service that looks at the dark web. It eliminates cybercrime. It deals with information warfare. It uses blockchain algorithms, zero trust models, all the buzzwords. It's there. It's doing that stuff. You can excuse me. You can learn more on darkkryptonite.com. Kryptonite with a C. Okay, our third story is ties in directly to our cyber tip of the week. So we could kind of, I guess, run these two things in parallel. But the headline reads: Florida waitress cons 99-year-old for nearly $600,000 to spend on vacations. This is it's kind of a departure from our usual stories. Our last story, we talked about 3 million downloads. We talked about these big numbers, and this is a small story in a sense, dealing, a local story dealing with just one victim, really. But it has, I guess, it has big numbers in its own way. I mean, a 99-year-old, imagine living that long only to get swindled, conned out of nearly $600,000. This poor old woman is probably still collecting, probably living meagerly, collecting Social Security checks, and she has this nest egg of, obviously, more than $600,000, because the authorities apparently, caught the perpetrator before she was completely bilked out of her life savings. Let's see, the investigators, a massive fraud scheme in Destin. So it's a Destin, Florida. This was a local Florida story. I don't know, what were your kind of key takeaway points, because you covered this story and added some kind of context to it. What did you think?
Yeah. And it was interesting because I was initially contacted really from our book, Senior Cyber, that you and I wrote. I guess they had some interest and they saw that and said, wow, Scott, can you weigh in? Because you authored a book with Craig on this, and it touches this exact subject, which was kind of nice. And as I dug in and did the research on the story, I did learn a couple tidbits that I thought was interesting, in that the woman, and she was the waitress that I guess this 99-year-old and her husband, who was passed away a year or two prior, I guess it was 2 years prior, she kind of befriended them, the waitress. So in a sense, it sounded like a little bit of deceit going on, and maybe a little bit of social engineering. And she was comforting her at where she worked at the diner or whatever. And next thing you know, this waitress is running errands for her. So she befriended her and probably said, hey, I'll pick up your prescriptions. Let me drop some food off. And they became good friends. And so what happens then is, naturally there was some trust that was built up. And then over an 18-month period, wire transfers were being pulled out of this 99-year-old account. But they were done in smaller increments because there were, and I forget the exact number off the top of my, but it was a lot of wire transfers, 20 or 30, 40 wire transfers, and they were all smaller. The maximum size of wire transfers was $70,000 that this criminal got away with, or alleged criminal. I guess it's still not proven out yet or gone to trial fully, but that tells you, by doing small increments and building trust. She probably did a wire transfer for $500 and said, ooh, nobody noticed. Let me wait a little. All right, let me try $1,000 next week. And then let me try this. And then she had a ruse when she fought and said, well, we were in a joint business venture together. And yet when they dug in and started to do the initial, investigation, they're like, well, wait a minute. What did you do with the $600,000 over 18 months? And the woman, the thief, went to Disney World and she bought a new car and she had all these lavish vacations and expenses, nothing tied to a business, nothing that tied to this 99-year-old. And the 99-year-old said she never gave her any of the personal information, never gave permission to access her bank account or anything. So you had two very different stories that I guess are being investigated till they come out with a conclusion on the whole thing. And the woman was let out on bail, the thief or alleged thief, To me, it sounds very guilty because there was nothing to prove, at least initially, that there really was a joint venture or business dealings that they had together. There was no permission that was stated. And it was ironic. The thief's brother was the
Mm.
one that I guess tipped law enforcement. He somehow came across it, and an attorney was fired for the one that was the alleged thief. So it's a very it makes almost like a soap opera type of TV show when you start reading all the
Mm.
fine details. He said this, she said this, and how it was discovered, transfers over time. And then they realized that they did have a friendship or relationship, this older woman and the thief. And I think that's really the heart of the matter, is that it taught me and probably others that dug into the story that you really got to be careful who you trust and with what information. What we don't know is, how did this woman have access to her bank account, and how did she get the money out of there? I can speculate. She probably said, "Oh, let me help you with that," or, "Oh, your social security check came in. I'll
Mhm.
help you with that and make sure I'll check your bank account each week to make sure it appears so nobody rips you off." So she
Right.
befriended her, build that trust up, and next thing you know, she's got access to the keys of the king, and probably could now start taking money out. And maybe she was clever enough even to go into her bank account, pulled out $3,000. And a lot of these accounts, you can code it with something. She
Mm.
could put $3,000 in, Medicare medication expense, or I don't know, something like that. That maybe if a relative went on to check the bank and said, "Oh, well, that's an expense toward her medicine, that's okay," or housing or rent or whatever else, it
Right.
suddenly fools people. And I think those type of things happened over this 18-month period, because that's a pretty long time to steal that much money. And it totaled over $600,000. That's a big heist.
Yeah. This is a reoccurring theme that we covered in Senior Cyber a lot. When you befriend someone, when you earn their trust, you have the keys to the kingdom in a sense, because just imagine how many scenarios she could have gotten her wire transfer, her bank account, the actual digits, that you have an older woman who maybe has poor eyesight, and this woman said, where are my glasses? Oh, don't worry about your glasses, I'll read the number off, to you, like that kind of thing, or I'll fill out this paperwork for you, or you're not so good on the computers, let me do this online banking for you, because we got to pay this, we're going to need to withdraw some cash so that you can get your prescriptions and whatnot. So there's just an infinite amount of scenarios that she could have used to take advantage of this elderly woman, and that's a recurring theme. We dealt with this a little bit in the first book, Hacked Again, because we had wire transfer fraud involving our company, Berkeley Varitronics, and
Mhm.
that was a red flag because of the amount. I think it was a red flag immediately for the authorities. Now,
Yes.
this woman, like you said, this woman probably started out small, and so no flags were sent off. But at some point, it seems like when a criminal has a good thing going, they get cocky and arrogant, and they keep upping the ante. And she must have upped the ante to a point where she raised that red flag, and that's where the authorities started looking into it, because she wasn't reported by this 99-year-old woman, but apparently this suspect's brother did see something and reported it. So um, there's, I don't know, what's a tip you could give? I mean, besides, you got to be watchful. You can't say trust no one, because that's not really fair. You can't go through life trusting no one, but you do have to do your kind of common sense due diligence when you do encounter a stranger, so that they're not in they don't have one over on you, so that they don't have too much information on you. It's kind of it's almost a mutual exchange. I mean, Kelly and I are going through this now a little bit with and I talked about this. I mentioned on the last podcast. This we're using a few different avenues to sell some items because we're in the process of moving, and we're finding it's incredible the amount of scam on. We're finding on Facebook Marketplace. I'm not trying to.
Oh yeah.
I'm not saying Facebook Marketplace is the worst, and because I don't have the statistics, but just anecdotally, we're talking to people that use Facebook Marketplace, and they say, yes, I've had the worst experiences on Facebook Marketplace with scams, and we're actually getting really good at. Well, Kelly deals with that stuff mostly, but so she's getting really good at dealing with these scams to the point where now, as soon as they want to leave uh, the kind of safe space of Facebook Messenger as your primary communications method to coordinate things,
Mm-hmm.
as soon as they want to leave that and say, oh, give me your phone number, she's like, bye, you're a scammer. And I and
Goodbye.
I'm I think I'm more trusting, a little more trusting than her naturally, and I'm saying, well, it's a little more convenient. Maybe they just want to get all. You don't need Facebook. Essentially, you just want to you want to coordinate with them because they're trying to come and pick up furniture, and you're trying to figure out what payment method you're going to use and all those things. And so I'm like, it's natural. And she's like, you know what? I've seen too many of these already. Too many people that turn something that says, now that I've got your number, I'm going to give you a call, or not a call. They usually don't call, but they'll text, text message.
Text you,
They
yeah.
like to hide behind that. And in the
Mm-hmm.
text, now she's getting all the people over text are saying like, how come you call me a scammer? All I wanted was to make a deal and say that I'll pay for I'll pay for this. If you pay for shipping first, then I'll pay for
Mm-hmm.
the item, and that stuff is
Damn.
instantly suspicious. And even
Yeah.
I trust, I'm more trusting, but even I know that that's ridiculous. And
Yeah.
that's leading directly into a scam. So it's really interesting, the kind of anecdotal sort of research we're doing and we're getting, and this is very small scale stuff, but we're quickly learning how to um, trust a stranger and how not to. We had a woman
Mhm.
just the other day. She used uh, she used a Facebook Marketplace and wanted to buy a kind of small, like a futon couch from us, and
Mhm.
she was very weird in that she's like, oh, I'm from out of town and I just rented a U-Haul. And she just had like, she was bothering Kelly a lot with a lot of questions and where are you located? And she kept repeating the same questions, and it was never ending. And Kelly's like, you know what? I'm going to hand you off to my husband. He's going to deal with you. And she gave me the whole lowdown and said, I don't trust this woman, but if you're willing to kind of vet her through these kind of exchanges and messages, then you do it and you deal with her. And she started to annoy me, but I said, let me see how this plays out. And of course I didn't give her any real information. All I did give her address because she would have to come to physically pick up our futon. That was part of the deal. And so we went through all of these exchanges, and in the end she was legitimate. She showed up with a U-Haul later than she said she would, but she showed up. She was like, oh, I'm from out of town and I'm lost and I'm a New Yorker like you guys, hey, and all this stuff.
Oh boy.
I helped her move the futon into the U-Haul. Right there on the spot, she paid using, I think, Venmo. She Venmoed Kelly. Kelly came out, verified that the payment went through. So everything was cool. We kind of did like kind of a almost a real time validity check on her, and it all worked out. But it just goes to show you that if you don't trust anyone, you're never gonna communicate with anyone. Nothing's ever gonna get accomplished. And on the other extreme, if you're overly trusting and very trusting, especially to strangers, you're gonna get taken probably multiple times in your life, and you might get
Yeah.
taken for your entire life savings if you meet that wrong person.
Sheesh, that's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was also thinking about when we were talking about the story before, kind of what leads somebody from doubting or the trust factor or things like that. And a lot of things with wire transfer fraud has to do with the sheer dollar amount. In other words, when they measure the rating, typically over $10,000, if there's an international wire transfer, it's automatically reported. But even domestically, I don't think a lot of people realize that if you even make a check over $10,000, it's supposed to be reported to the IRS. If you're doing wire transfers over $10,000, supposed to be reported to the IRS. And there's even smaller services now that are popping up. I think Zelle and WeTransfer and others that are often used for smaller transactions where you don't want to pay. Some wire transfer fees might be $20, $30. Some are as high as $200, $300, depending upon the amount. So there's these other new startup services that are getting very popular with very low fees or percentage of fees that are more like credit card transactions or even less. And some are fee free for a very small amount of money. And I guess the hopes that you start liking the service and moving money around to pay friends or buy things, this and that. And next thing you know, they're making their fees because just of the use model that you're sending more and more dollars. But I think those things are red flags to the IRS, to law enforcement, to banks and others when big dollars are going out. And I'm not saying that to encourage cyber criminals that are listening to this episode to say, "Ooh, okay, so if I'm gonna, scam somebody, I'm gonna break it up into small transactions." But in reality, that's what they do. And the same thing true. We've talked about credit cards before. They test an account with a 99-cent transaction fee or something if it's a stolen credit card, and they'll put it together and give some free cards out there on the dark web. Maybe they're selling a list of 10,000 cards and they charge, $3 a card or something like that. They'll give away 50 or something so you could try them. If they work, the bad guy tries them and says, "This is great. It's a legitimate list. Let me pay top dollar for it." So a lot of that type of stuff goes on, I think. And I think when you see high transactions, those are all red flags. So I wasn't surprised when I heard that it was like over X number of transactions before this person finally got caught after 18 months. It's just something to think about, I guess. And I guess it ties in nicely. I think you kind of alluded to it in the beginning. What are some things we could do to keep our personal data private, our financial data private? One thing is make sure that you check it regularly. You hear about if you have a 401k account, especially with the volatile markets and stuff, just don't look at the statement. Well, looking at statements on a regular basis is good because you can look for anomalies quickly. If you check your credit card statement or your online banking, if you check in once a week, it's far better than checking in once a month or once every few months, because you're going to see that anomaly where a transaction happened and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't do that. Or, oh, my spouse didn't do that, or whatever, whoever else is linked to the account. You want those red flags to go up and question things. Just validate and say, okay, all these transactions are legitimate, because time is of the essence. Once a wire transfer is done, once a credit card is compromised, you only have so many days to actually report the fraud or potential fraud. So if you wait a week, a month, a couple months, the damage may be done. And guess what? You may not get your money back. Or if you do, it's going to cost you a lot of money and go through a lot of rape. So with scams like this, it's really hard, especially in this case, it was a 99-year-old woman. I mean, she is living in a senior home and got fixed expenses and other things. Her mind is probably not focused on, let me check my checking account and savings account balance every day to see if there's fraudulent activity. Her thoughts are focused on maybe her health or other things like that, or her family. So cyber criminals take advantage of that. And I think we talk a lot about that in Senior Cyber, sharing tips throughout the book there that hopefully people, especially those dear older elderly ones, can appreciate and actually apply so they don't live in fear of these crazy scammers that are out there.
Absolutely. Another off top of my head, another thing I could think of is, the sharing of personal data, private data on social networks is, a huge, it's a very easy way for hackers and scammers to take advantage of that data. Now, we don't know the specifics of how this alleged scammer and this 99-year-old woman met. I suspect they didn't meet on social media. So
No, I think it
you
was at the diner just because she was a waitress there. That's the sense I
probably
got, but there may be more backstory to it.
in person. So in a
Yeah.
way, she was an advanced scammer because she used kind of one-on-one social
Hmm.
engineering techniques. She probably charmed this old woman or told her
Yeah.
stories and said, "Oh, you remind me of my grandmother," or whatever.
Yeah.
Those type of things. Those things. I hate to stereotype, but those things tend to work better on elderly, I think.
Yes.
Whereas on the other hand, you got kids on TikTok and Snapchat and a non-personal a text message from some random person that you might be connected with on a social network, but you never met and you never have any
Exactly.
intention of meeting them.
Total disconnect.
Yeah, those kids might be more trusting of that even, which is even stranger to someone like me and we're
Hmm.
kind of in that middle
Yeah. We're
generation
not.
where we're not sure what to trust. you know
Yeah.
um so you got to watch out what you share and who you share it with, because scammers are gonna take advantage of every possible outlet, and social media is a biggie.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I guess with social media, typically a younger generation. I envision, and I could be wrong, but this 99-year-old probably doesn't have a TikTok account or Twitter or Instagram or anything like that. Unlikely. There are some, but probably unlikely. So the fact that this criminal, this waitress, she used the fact that they came in to eat every week or something like that, and maybe she tried to lure them in a little bit and saying, hey, how you doing again, and hey, let me give you an extra slice of pie here, and let me give you an extra cup of coffee, it's on the house, or who knows what she did to kind of befriend them. Before you know it, they're helping one another, and next thing you know, they know about one another's personal lives. And maybe this 99-year-old needed help with medication, and then maybe she came in distraught when her husband passed, and suddenly this criminal became a somebody that provided her comfort, emotionally, friendship, and then she moved in to start scamming and taking away her money through these various wire transfer schemes.
Mhm. Yeah. So as
Yeah.
far as an actionable tip, I would say this is no silver bullet, but if you have someone anonymously contacting you through a messaging platform or through text message, I say call them out and say, let's hash out details over the phone, because 9 times out of 10, that's going to scare off most scammers. I think,
Yeah,
there
sure.
are still scams out there that anticipate that move and they want you to talk to them because that's a different level of scam. But just to kind of filter out a lot of the anonymous, faceless scammers out there, voiceless scammers,
Hmm.
I would say call them out and say, I'm going to need some. I want to hear your voice. I want to talk to you about this because this is something, or we should meet in person. Obviously in a
Hmm.
public space or a safe place. You want to do that, of course. I'm not saying you want to meet them at their home because you never know.
Hmm.
So you want to call their bluff in a sense, and I think that can help filter out a lot of these nefarious characters.
Yeah, no, I think that there's truth to that. It makes total sense. Yeah, good story, and it was certainly an interesting, slightly different spin on the traditional story. And I really appreciated the fact this was somebody elderly here, and the ability to at least share some tips from the all the research we did with cybersecurity, which is wonderful to see.
Yeah, and I'm gonna obviously we're gonna share all the links, the News Nation interview you did, all the links to the stories are in the show notes. Um, so let's close out this episode. But before we do, just want to one last time remind our listeners that Dark Kryptonite is a sponsor, and Dark Kryptonite stops ransomware, malware, and phishing in their tracks, eliminating cybercrime, fraud, and information warfare using advanced blockchain algorithms, zero trust models. Learn more on darkkryptonite.com, kryptonite spelled with a C. Um, Before we go, you got anything coming up? Or are you doing? Oh, you're I believe you're going to be attending Black Hat, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of excited about that. That's coming up soon. I have a little vacation coming up and starting next week, just with family. But then after that, I'm going to be heading out beginning of what is it? August. I'll be in what is it? The 10th, 11th, and 12th. It's actually Black Hat in Vegas. That's followed by DEF CON. So I'll be at both of those shows. And I'm honored again to meet up with the team at Cybercrime Magazine. And I'll be doing a lot of high level executive interviews at the Secure Works booth. So if you are out at Black Hat or your DEF CON, please certainly stop by SecureWorks booth there and get to meet them and learn some of the great stuff that SecureWorks is doing and the team at Cybercrime Magazine. And it'll be an exciting show. I've been there a couple times now, and it's always exciting stuff, and you learn a lot at Black Hat. So encourage people if you're in Vegas, then in the beginning of August, come on by or reach out to me or DM me or shoot me an email, whatever, and let's connect up there and get to know one another a little bit better and some of the great stuff that you're involved in.
Great. Yeah. So listeners, if you want to match a voice to a face, you want to, shake Scott's hand, yeah, definitely check him out. And we'll be talking about all those interviews and your experiences at those conferences in upcoming episodes, of course.
Yes.
Let me read us out here. This podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, Google, iHeart, Apple, Amazon, and more. If you'd like to hear, please, if you like what you hear, please subscribe and review our podcast. We need your reviews. So give us 3 stars. Hopefully give us 5 stars. Questions and comments, DM us on Twitter at ScottBVS or visit scottschober.com. You can also visit bvsystems.com. You can leave messages there too, of course, for more information. And if we read your comment or question on the podcast, we'll send you a signed copy of one of our books. And then those books are Hacked Again, Cybersecurity is Everybody's Business, and Senior Cyber. Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for more stories, more cybersecurity news. And signing out from the West Coast, Craig Schober.
All right. Thanks again, Craig. Nice chatting with you. And signing out from the East Coast, this is Scott Schober. And everybody out there, have a good one, and please stay safe.